This is WSQF Blink Radio, yours truly, Mac on the Rock. I'm interrupting this rock and roll fiesta we've been having for about 850 hours, approaching 1,000 hours, trying to break the FM record of continuous rock and roll music without a commercial break. But I have to chime in because today is my father's birthday. He passed away in 2014 on Father's Day at 5:38 p.m. It's quite a man, quite a tribute, an American dream, American success story as a Cuban American immigrant. And I would like to read a tribute to him that I dedicated to him and wrote a couple hours after he passed away. I think it pretty much sums up who my father Roberto Cambó was. And considering we're waiting for the third day for Jesus' resurrection, tomorrow, Easter Sunday, I wish you all a joyful one. I ask you to be obedient to him, be his prophet, and profess his good works as he would wanted us to do as pilgrims for dying for our sins. So Jesus Christ has risen. So this tribute to my father was published in the Islander News. And like I said, he came here with $70, as many Cuban immigrants came with absolutely nothing. He knew that feeding his family, the key to it was, getting in the fruits and vegetable business, the produce business. And this is what he did. So here we go. My father, Roberto Cambó, passed away surrounded by all 9 of his grandchildren and 3 sons, holding his hand in a human chain as we prayed the Lord's Prayer. For the non-believers out there, I can testify as I remained holding his hand, I could feel his warm, radiant spirit pass through my arm. Then 3 seconds elapsed of last breaths as he passed. So please believe in the resurrection, for Jesus Christ has risen and he carried my father indeed. What started in late 1957 as a casual encounter and a marriage proposal on the beach in front of the University of Miami Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences on Virginia Key became a Key Biscayne legacy in its finality. My father met my mother, Teresita Romero, on that beach while she playfully fished with a nephew on vacation. Roberto offered to detangle the line as if he was an avid fisherman with experience. This bought him some time and opportunity to introduce himself. My mother expressed to me that she could tell he was not a fisherman, but was a hard worker, for he never gave up trying to fix the fishing pole quagmire. As he made gestures of self-actualization and pride, he pleaded with her to see him again. With my grandfather Romero omnipresent as a chaperone that day, she declined. So then he proposed marriage, saying that if she accepted his proposition, he would promise her the same view of this ocean front. Months later, after both returned to Cuba separately, my father began visiting all the branches of the Royal Bank of Canada, where he knew she had worked. With a lease in his hand, he asked her to lunch with his mother, and so it was. They married and rented a small apartment on the ocean front, 1 block from the Havana Riviera Hotel in El Malecón for $70 a month. By July 1959, my older brother Robert was born. As the Castro Revolution took shape and declared all the children born to the revolutions were properties of the state, my parents made a mad dash for the exit. My dad landed on a charter jet along with all the employees of the Riviera Hotel in July 1960. My mother was able to be transferred as a Royal Bank employee to a branch in Jamaica, where she volunteered to help as a Spanish-English translator between the bank and the Jamaican government as it processed Cuban exiles. From there, immigration was in my father's hands, with letters addressed to the United States Consul in Medallo, Cuba, from the General Counsel of Hotel Sorrento in Miami Beach. The employment letters requesting a visa, and they were dated December the 31st, 1960, and stated that my father's job paid $62 a week as a front desk clerk. And the January 3rd, 1961 letter promising my mother a position as a telephone switchboard operator, paying her $200 a month. The extraordinary quest that was to become my father's and mother's American dream had begun. With very little formal primary education, my dad decided self-employment in the produce business, in the wholesale industry, was the answer to feeding his family. So he purchased a 1950 Mercury by bartering with a watch on his arm, and proceeded to tear out the back seat to enlarge the trunk space. With no capital to buy produce, he engaged a produce wholesaler named Joe Zales with another proposition. Joe, give me your worst produce every morning, and I will return every afternoon with the profits. And so it went. Soon after, Mr. Zales subleased a portion of his space in the produce plaza right behind Jackson Memorial Hospital. Over the course of 20-hour work days, the 2 decades that followed, my father purchased a house on South Master Drive with the oceanfront view he had promised my mother, and the 2 warehouses abutting a railroad track on Northwest 23rd Street. Upon its sale in 1984, Rocam Produce Company was the 3rd largest wholesaler in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Monroe counties. He was a merchant at heart. Retirement at the age of 50 was not in the cards for my father. He ventured into residential real estate development. His second project was Presidential Corners on Southwest 12th Avenue in Little Havana. That thoroughfare was renamed Ronald Reagan Avenue after my dad petitioned the city of Miami to honor the 40th president with a lunch visit that occurred there at La Esquina de Tejas restaurant on May 20th, 1983. My father purchased Key Biscayne Hardware and Key Florida Hardware from Mr. Vidri after Hurricane Andrew damaged the inventories of both stores. He quickly abandoned the True Value and Service Star franchises for the Ace Hardware Co-op, where it is today. Over the course of the next decade, he operated it until his death, and he expanded it to a freestanding commerce center. Entrepreneurship was not his only talent. In fact, it wasn't a talent at all, it was acumen. Throughout his life, as an American citizen, he cherished the virtues of self-reliance that only the Democratic Republic of America offers. He was relentless in his efforts to topple the dictatorship in Cuba. As a strong advocate for the small Republican Party of Dade County back in 1970, he spent much of his time and resources in an effort to get political prisoners and dissidents out of Cuba. His shining moment came when Ronald Reagan twice appointed him to the National Commission for Employment Policy. At the time, the national unemployment rate was 11%. With his eye on freedom for Cuba and a strong anti-communist himself, he and my mother were instrumental in the founding of the Cuban American National Foundation, along with their good friend Jorge Macanoso and his friends. My mother, the only woman on the original board of directors, worked tirelessly on what was called the Radio Martí PAC to bring a project to give the voice of democracy to the Cuban people. My father was duly bound to apply his principles to his circumstances. While Castro's communists infiltrated Nicaragua, supporting the Sandinista revolution, my father organized public fundraising rally in Hialeah racetrack with 20,000 people in attendance. There he proclaimed the Cuban exiles' financial support to the Contras, the freedom fighters. He demonstrated that same zeal as part of a syndicate that promoted the 1912-1982 championship fight in the Orange Bowl between Nicaraguan boxing legend Alexis Arguello and Aaron Pryor. With his belief system where small government and lower real estate tax were paramount, a desire to get involved in the fledgling 1970s movement, an effort to incorporate Key Biscayne, came easy. Once the Grand Bay and the Ocean Club's developments were permitted in the late 1980s, he knew that the tax base would support excellent fire and police services, and his friends at the county would finally relent and call the vote to allow us to incorporate. At the first original charter writing commission meeting to write the charter for the newly Key Biscayne municipality, Roberto Cambó called the motion to name the new municipality the Village, as in the village of Key Biscayne. When asked why he chose the name, Roberto simply replied, "Teresita knew I was not a fisherman the moment we met, but she did know and had no doubts in the disciples Peter and Paul and the others were indeed fishermen. So a dad who did not have a dad to look up to was an extraordinary dad who is now looked up to. He continued to work hard, breathing 8 long days at hospice, days to keep a promise to myself to depart on Father's Day. Only in America. Rest in peace, Bobby. Paid in full."